Hello, I think we're live.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. I'm Britany Sparrow, and I'm the president of the New Brunswick Film Co-op. And I would like to welcome you all to this Q&A for the film Wharf Rats. We have the director, Jason Arsenault, and the producer, Jenna MacMillan, here with us. Um, Hello, Jason and Jenna.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks so much for coming and being a part of this Q&A online. It's been a really cool festival this year. It's been very different, and it's great that we're able to do these Q&As with the filmmakers like this. So I've really enjoyed watching your film, and the first thing that really stood out to me that I would like to hear more about, the film feels very authentically Prince Edward Island. The island itself is almost a character in the film. Can you talk about what it was like making the film and how PEI was such an important part of the film?
Yeah, when we started the project, before we really even had an idea of what we wanted to make, we knew that we wanted to find a way to really put PEI up front and center in the story in the film. And then once we, realized, we're going to we wanted to make this comedy about these guys and the wharf, then it became about finding locations like Rustico, where we shot, that really looked and felt like the type of place that you would see only in PEI. So right from the beginning, that was really important for us.
Jenna, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just echo that as soon as we found Rustico, which is a small fishing village with a population that is, it's a tiny little village, but there's a ton of tourists that come in and out of it in the summer. But fishing is its mainstay. That's what it's known for. So the fact that we were able to kind of integrate ourselves into this community and film it during the off season, like Jason said, it added this whole other layer of authenticity, but also it was important to us that we were really welcomed into the community and that we made sure that we were representing that community as authentically as possible.
That's really cool. And I think, Jason, you said you even spent a day out on a lobster boat.
Yeah,
What
for
was that
sure.
like?
It was interesting, because we were writing about the world before we knew a lot of the details around the work and how lobster fishing worked and what it looked like on fishing boats. And so I spent some time just asking people who were fishermen, how does this work and how does that work, and showing us around. And then one evening, after doing this for the entire day, Sean Gallant, who I was talking to, was like, well, why don't you come fishing with us tomorrow? And I was like, okay, sure. Like, what time? And so he said, be here at like 4 a.m. or something crazy. And so he didn't say I had to be there, but it kind of felt a little bit like I had to. So I went and I spent the day, at first just watching, but then they gave me a lot of chores. As lobsters came in, I was checking them for size and putting bands on them, and doing all kinds of little things to help their day, which ended up being like a really busy one. But yeah, it was an incredible experience. That's one of the great things about making movies a lot of the time, is that you get to experience in some way something about the people that you're making the movie about. So I'm
Yeah.
really grateful for that.
And we hired Sean Gallant to be, we called him our fixer, but he helped be a liaison for us and the rest of the community. And he also taught a lot of our actors how to look the part. And so he did a day of rope training and all sorts of other stuff. So he was invaluable for all of us.
That's really cool. Jenna, when we were talking about this earlier, you were telling me that mentorship was a really big part of making this. I know for myself, mentorship is something that I've always really valued. And so I was really interested to hear how you made this film and made mentorship such a big part of it.
Yeah, we have a really lean and mean industry on PEI, but it's very much in its infancy. So we have a lot of dedicated filmmakers, but I think many of us have had to be producers and directors and kind of everything. But it was important to us when we were making this web series that we exposed emerging filmmakers or filmmakers who would want to try doing various different jobs, that we gave them an opportunity to learn. Because both Jason and I have, had some film training, but we both agree that where we've really learned has been on set. So it's so hard to kind of learn from YouTube videos or from books how a film comes together. It's really important to be on the ground. So because that was really important to us, it was necessary for us to find heads of departments who were committed to seeing that mentorship through. So we brought in heads of departments for every department for the most part. And except for costume, we have a local costume designer who came on board, but every single key had to agree to take on at least 2 support staff who were either brand new or just starting. And they had to commit for the whole shoot that there would be a level of mentorship all the way through. And that was we found that, it was a bit of a risk. We didn't know how it would work. But in the end, it ended up being incredibly successful. And after our shoot, there were a bunch of smaller shoots that kind of started happening throughout the year after we went to production. And we've been watching as all of the, those people from the support departments, they're now kind of keying their departments, and they've really caught the bug, and they've fallen in love with film for the most part. So yeah, it was a great practice and experiment for us, and it's something that we're going to continue bringing on to any production that we make on PEI.
That's really cool. Like I say, I feel very strongly for that. We have that, I think, in New Brunswick as well. It's hard to learn, like you said, it's hard to learn from reading about it, or you can take classes and workshops and things, but there's nothing quite like being on set to learn. And so I've always valued that. And so I really think it's really awesome that you guys did that as well.
Yeah, it was cool. Like one of the people that was living in Rustico, I think I told you this story, Britany, she was she was just graduated from high school. She wasn't sure what she wanted to do. She had just moved to Canada, and she lived in this small fishing village, and she came by the fire hall, which was our production office, and she was just like, what's going on here? What's everybody doing? And my production manager, Britany, was like, well, come hang out with us for a day and see if you're into it. And we brought her into the team, and now she's pursuing a career in film. So it's that was really cool. There were many stories like that, but that was a neat one for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Jason, this project had various stages and phases in the writing process and the production process along the way. It was a web series, and then it was you said it was a feature, and then a web series, and then a feature again. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's been, all kinds of different forms. When we started, we had a very small version of this that we were pitching through a competition called the CBC Comedy Coup, and it was, you make little sketches every week for 10 weeks or something, and there was 300 teams involved, and our team was lucky enough to be one of the top 5. And so we ended up going to Whistler, to the Whistler Film Festival, and we were pitching live for the opportunity to make this a television series, or at least the pilot of a television series. We didn't win that competition, but we did well enough that we had some offers for production companies looking to make this into a feature film. So we started writing it as a feature. Those things for a bunch of reasons just didn't happen at that time. And a while later, we saw some opportunities to try to fund this as a web series through Telefilm's Talent to Watch and IPF and Bell Fund. So we reconstructed it as a web series. We secured the funding that way, but we always envisioned it as a feature. So even though we've satisfied the web series components for the funders, we've also cut this feature length version of it, which we're now sending out to festivals as a feature film. So it's kind of lived in all these different forms. The stories changed a little bit to work in different ways, but as emerging filmmakers, it was really about how can we finance the story. And as the opportunities for financing changed, so we had to be sort of willing to change the shape and form of the project. So we weren't really hard-headed about this has to be our first feature film that has to be released in this way. We were just about how can we make our own projects, like how can we find financing for this and just do it ourselves.
Yeah. And so you wrote it with the two main actors as well. The three of you were sort of a team. And
Yes.
so, sorry, go ahead.
No, so the three of us, Robbie and Dennis, who are the leads, so from the very beginning, when we were trying to pitch the CBC Comedy Coup, we were spinning this idea between the three of us, and it just sort of kept growing.
And so what was it like writing together and then finding your roles as director and actors after the fact?
Yeah, it was interesting, that everybody brings different things. Like, I'm really interested in story and story structure, but I don't think I'm not a natural comedian, maybe in the way that Dennis and Robbie in some ways are. So, I would have often sort of structure the story the way I thought it worked. A lot of the time you'd have Robbie would come in after that and really make things shine. Like, he was really able to give it a lot of that PEI character. He has sort of a way with words and just a way to be able to spin scenes to be quite unique and funny. And then usually Dennis and we would work through the scenes, because Dennis was like, to be able to see Dennis who's a really physical actor, to be able to see him go through those scenes, that's kind of where he shined. He could act through them. He would build the characters in person. And so we just sort of settled on that role, or those roles, and it just worked for us. Three different types of writing and understanding the different sensibilities and being able to merge that a little bit. And then, sorry, in terms of how did it work, like later in terms of directing and acting, on set, there wasn't really much of an issue to figure that sort of stuff out. Like, I found both of them were really receptive, I think, at that stage to just, me directing. Robbie had been writing that character for so long. It had been years by then. I kind of knew what he was going to present. He knew what he was going to present. And the same thing was true of Dennis. So, once the writing stopped, the rest of that was sort of easy.
That's cool. And so, Jenna, how did you get involved in this project?
Funnily enough, I was part of the Women in the Director's Chair program around the same time that War Frauds was a finalist at Whistler. So I was in Whistler for that program, and I was there for their final pitch, which was really funny, but I wasn't part of the team. And then I guess 2 or 3 years later, when Jason was repurposing the content as a potential web series, he brought me or asked me to come on board to help produce it as a web series. So we started with Telefilm Talent to Watch, that application, and IPF, and then the next year we got Bell Fund. So it just kind of happened very organically that way.
Cool. Let's see, what else do I have here? I was going to ask you about one of my favorite scenes in the movie is the scene where they're learning how to fish on a boat on shore. And I thought that was really funny and really clever, but it also seemed to me a very authentic, natural way to not have to shoot all of these scenes out on the water. And you'd said there were some logistics about why you couldn't have shot on the water anyway. So how did that come about?
Yeah, I don't exactly remember when that idea came about. I know that, in the early drafts, when your imagination sort of runs wild, that we probably had half the movie like out on a fishing boat, which, thank God we cut most of that, because that's just really hard to do. The boat's moving, you're looking through a camera and that's moving, the monitor's moving. People were getting sick because of that. And then in terms of some of the fishing stuff that we thought we wanted to show, you just couldn't. There's just rules and regulations about lobster traps in and out of the water off season. And so we cut a lot of the original on the boat stuff. It just made sense at that point. But we always knew we wanted to have some totally ridiculous learning to fish montage. I think it was probably Robbie who had the idea of I don't know if it was like a hidden boat or it was just something. Oh, it was a parade float. That's what I don't even know where that came from. For some reason they had a parade float. I don't know. So that somehow evolved into a fishing boat. I think because we saw one, like we were driving someplace in the country and somebody just had one in a field, and it was like this really cool image. It was at the time the one that we saw was this big flat grass field. The sun's coming down. There's this boat in the distance. We were like, wow, that's incredible. And then it just became about finding a boat that people would let us use. And somehow we were lucky enough that we found this boat that we used in our film in the backyard of a guy who lived pretty much where we were shooting everything else, like within a 30-second walking distance of every scene in that movie, there is a boat in a field. And so, it was just, I guess, luck eventually.
Yeah, it was in the backyard of Huey's house where we shot. It was just like we didn't have to move base camp. It just right there. So that was but that was kind of rustico too. Everything was just like right there, which was very convenient for me as a producer because very few unit moves and everybody we had several pieces of equipment that just stayed on the wharf, which was really helpful. Yeah. And what Jason said too about being out on the water, that was a unique challenge for him as a director, making a show about lobster fishing. And because of when we were shooting, which was off season, it was against the law to shoot with lobster traps on boats. So it, like Jason said, that sequence that on dry, like on land, that was always part of the show, but we did have several scenes with traps on a boat. So Jason had to creatively find a way around that. So anytime we're out on the water, you'll notice no one's interacting with the lobster trap. So all of that is on the wharf. Yeah.
Cool.
Which we didn't know. We didn't know any of that until when we thought we were going to shoot it.
And the DSO gave me a phone call. This is a thing. So.
Yeah, it's amazing the things that you don't know until you start making a film about it.
Yeah, that's right. Then you learn everything about it.
Yeah. I have a message here just from one of the listeners or watchers. Hi, congrats. This was so hilarious. I followed along since 2014, and it's so great and inspiring. Most of all, a story of strength and persistence. Well worth it. Congrats. Funny AF. Cheers, Eric Braun from New Brunswick.
Hey, thanks.
Hi, Eric.
Hi, Eric.
Thanks for watching. So, one of the other things I guess that I noticed about this film is obviously when you're writing it, you've got your two leads cast. How did you come about doing the casting for the rest of the roles? How did that fall into play?
Yeah, it was kind of tricky, because we were always trying to balance, budgetary constraints, like because on PEI you have to bring people in and put them up in hotels and whatnot. So we wanted to have a cast that we thought felt like we were making a bigger show than our previous projects, but at the same time you're trying to find trying to find that magic number. But we lucked out, in that we just scoured the internet looking at people and possibilities. And for them, like we found what we thought was the perfect cast for this. Annie Briggs, who plays Crystal Dawn, is totally perfect. We thought, we love her. Daniel Lilford, who came on as Angus, who we didn't know but had been recommended to us by a friend, has like absolutely incredible scenes. Jonathan Torrens and Shelley Thompson, Sue Kent, they all, I think, I don't know how we ended up getting them all. It feels like a huge cast for such a little tiny web series, but they all give the show like this real depth that in some ways I like, you know, I love Wharf Rats. It's this little show about these two idiots hanging around on the wharf, but then you have like these great dramatic scenes with Daniel Lilford and Annie Briggs. It's just incredible.
Yeah. And we should give a shout out. The character of Shink is played by a legendary Prince Edward Island actor named Bill McFadden. He plays Annie Briggs, Crystal Dawn's father. There's that great scene between the two of them about how he needs to sell his the fishing boat, their family fishing boat. And that scene in a comedy, it has so much weight, and it's such a beautiful scene between these two really gifted actors. But he passed away in May. Of cancer pretty suddenly, so that, you know, it feels like this feature is a real tribute to him, and it was one of his last performances, so it's really special for us to have him in this feature.
Yeah, that was a pretty powerful scene.
Yeah, very, very powerful, and just
for sure.
That's like, I think Jason's real skill as a writer and director is that this is a real issue in these small communities on PEI, trying to make a living in this really challenging, weather dependent kind of industry. And I think the way that Jason and the other writers have handled it with such heart and grit, but there's also a lot of laughs along the way. So yeah, but the actors helped a lot delivering that authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was my first time directing that many actors who had that much experience, and I mean, you don't have to do a whole lot really as the director at that point. You know, once you get to set and, you know, you've already had some say in the wardrobe and the locations and the script, but for the most part, people like Bill and Annie and Daniel, you kind of just let them go, really. At least I felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a director, I'm also very interested in working with actors, and that's what I always say is like my secret is you just cast good actors and then you don't have to do anything. And then everyone's like, wow, you did a really good job with your film. And I'm like, I did nothing. It was all of the actors. I love that. So let's talk about what were some of the things that you found the most challenging about making this project? Ooh, Jenna, why don't you start?
I do think that the challenge of making something of this scale on PEI, where you don't have to only import the acting talent, you have to import, like we said, all of the heads of departments, all of the gear. You know, those are huge challenges that you can plan for theoretically, but when you're in it and realizing how, like for us, the cost just started kind of multiplying. So I think that was a real challenge, is not understanding how many things we needed to bring in order for this to happen. And mind you, we employed every single local that we could. We used everything that we could on PEI, but there are just challenges, like the skilled technicians that exist. It's hard for them to make a living on PEI. So in our case, like, our production designer is from Prince Edward Island, but he has to work in Halifax. So we brought him home. But yeah, just the fact that we had to do that across the board was super challenging. And we did have a green crew. Like the mentorship side of it is really incredible, but there is that other side that you are working with a lot of new people. And Jason and I are new. This was our first kind of project of the scale. So yeah, I think those are broad, but there were a lot of challenges that came because of those elements.
Jason, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, up until this point, I mean, I had never made anything with this many people, this many moving parts. Most of the stuff that I had made at this point primarily was documentary at that stage. So, I was used to a sound person, I was used to a camera operator or two, but not really a whole crew. So I was really learning on the fly. Like set etiquette, how the set works, what's expected in terms of my interaction with the actors, and it was really hard. I think on day 2 or 3, in your maybe it's like this for everybody on every movie, but for me it was like, wow, I don't know if I can do another 15 days of this. But then by about day 10, I was like, I need another 15 days for sure. So for me it was I had never done anything like that. And, you're learning on the fly. And, because Jenna and I have been there since the beginning, there's also that feeling that, the mistakes that I make or that we make is also out of our budget too, right? So it's like, you're trying to make something great because it was our opportunity. But you also recognize that you're just learning, but
yeah.
It's like every project, I think.
Yeah, I haven't made a feature yet, but I've made a lot of shorts, and every short that I make, it's like, oh, this is really hard. There's always those challenges that come up, and it doesn't matter how many times you do it. There's always something.
Yeah, every time you finish a project, I sort of think that I'll probably never do one again. And then, there's like a couple months go by, and then you come across some story that you think is interesting, and it all starts all over.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have another message from Sarah McAdam. Heard about this film web series through PEI Locals for a while. Delighted to have caught it today. What a production. Jonathan Torrens and Crystal Dawn and her father stole the show. So solid.
Yeah, they do steal the show.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, Sarah. All right. So I think we're getting close to the end. So I've got a couple more things that I wanted to ask. First of all, what's next for the movie and what's next for you guys?
Go ahead.
Oh, apparently we still have lots of time, but I still want an answer to this question.
Go ahead, Jason.
In terms of Wharf Rats, I mean, we're just, getting it out there as much as we can. We're still early in its festival stage. We're talking to possible distributors for the project. So we're still totally open in terms of where it could go or take us. Even from the way that the show developed, we kind of see that you just never know where something's going to take you or what doors are going to open. When we started with CBC Comedy Coup, like the idea that it would ever exist as a feature film, like going through the festival circuit, I don't know if we ever thought that far ahead. So, who knows? But in terms of for us, or at least for me, I'm just trying to get more projects going. Jenna and I have a bunch of stuff on our plates, and we'd love to have another project that's a bigger project on PEI, hire all the same people that we hired before from PEI and just, keep making stuff.
Yeah. And also we have a feature film that we shot in October on PEI called A Small Fortune. And it's been in development almost or longer than Wharf Rats. We created a short film with Adam Perry, who's the writer-director. And then 3 or 4 years later, we were shooting the feature film. We got telefilm financing for that. And it's in post-production. The intention was for it to do the festival circuit starting this September 2020, but COVID has, thrown a curveball in it. So we're exploring all options with that feature as well. But that's a different genre. It's like a thriller. It's a thriller set and Western PEI.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We just have another question from the audience. Were there any disasters on set that you look back and laugh about now?
Ooh,
That's funny. I was thinking actually when Jason was talking about learning on the fly and wondering if you're going to be able to do it. There was this one day, and I can't remember all of the things that went wrong, but I remember that there were a series of 4 before lunch. One was that an actor that was supposed to play at 4 o'clock that day, at 10 o'clock in the morning, she twisted her ankle. She, I think, broke her ankle. So we had to recast her. So that was one. And then there were a couple of others. And then right before lunch, I could see the assistant. And I remember saying to Jason, I think, like, well, at least we know it can't get worse than this. And then I got this call on my walkie. The assistant director needed to talk to me, and I could see her crossing the field where that boat scene where the training school happened. I see her walking towards me, and her face is totally white, and she just looks like shit. So I was like, okay, I think it's worse. And she came up to me and she told me that the card that we had used to shoot that morning had been corrupt, and we lost the whole morning. So it was like, that is for sure worse than everything else that happened. But yeah, I just remember being like, oh, well, like, what are we going to do now? So we just ate lunch and then made a plan and figured it out. So yeah, those are a couple of disasters.
I must have PTSD or something, because I almost don't remember any of that stuff. I mean, I think that some of the hardest days were really the day we shot in the goat barn. That, like, the doors had to be closed, and it was so hot that people were like not feeling well. It was just not a great day for work, I think. But you know, I mean, it feels like every day, every hour, there's something going wrong, you know? So, but nothing went so wrong that we didn't finish the movie, right?
Well, that's good.
That goat day was so different for me. I wasn't in the goat barn. I was outside, and I had a different goat baby in my arms like every 20 minutes. I had seriously considered adopting several goats that day.
They were so cute.
So cute.
Yeah, that's the thing they always say is don't work with animals and kids. Was it hard working with the goats, or were they pretty good?
Yeah, I mean, I think the goats were like as easy as some of the actors probably. They were well trained.
One of the goats came to our premiere, our launch of the movie, the red carpet.
That's exciting.
It pooped on the red carpet.
Perfect.
I mean, it was funny. Yeah, they always say don't like work with animals and don't work with children. And it's funny because, you know, when you're writing and your imagination is just going wild, you think, well, okay, I just need a goat shot. It's not that hard. And I just need the kid to say 2 words. It's not that hard. But, you know, even stuff that reads very easy on paper is always going to be very hard to shoot. And if it reads kind of hard, then, you know, it's going to be really, really hard to shoot.
Yeah.
So that's a lesson learned, I think.
Yeah. Couple more questions coming in. Do you both work with other people creatively or just each other?
Yeah, I work with other people. Jason and I have worked together a bunch, but I have I have a bunch of people that I collaborate with. Yeah.
It's the same. You know, it's always good to have like a small pool of people you can draw from for different things, for different ideas. I think, you know, Jenna and I we've worked together a bunch, I think, because at least our producing sensibilities, I think, meld really well. So that's something you know, we'll keep doing. But, you know, I think even like our group, like the group that we draw from, we still consider our group. So some of the people that I draw from for projects, Jenna also draws from or works with. And so it's like a small collective of people that are always working together with different skills.
Jason has a really affinity for horror films. So I've told him, and I can't watch horror films, so I've told him I'm not the gal for those.
I'm in a similar boat. I have a lot of friends that want to make a lot of horrors, and I can work on them, and then I don't want to watch it when it's over.
Yeah, like producing it, having to review cuts. No, thank you.
Yeah. Another question. Were you happy with your funding, and did you come in on budget? And did your province come in with funding as well?
Yes, we did come in on budget. We were very happy with our funding. We felt very supported. Like Jason said, we didn't have enough days, but I feel like you never have enough days. Like, because of all of the challenges that we experienced with importing the talent and the crew and the gear, we did have to reduce the number of days. But I think we were a very well supported web series. We were lucky enough to be successful for Telefilm, IPF, and Bell Fund. I think we were one of the first projects to be able to do that web series in Canada. So that was great. What was the other question?
Did your province come in with funding?
Oh, yes. So we were a pilot project as part of the new PEI Film and Media rebate program. So, or media fund. So we were well supported by the province as well. So that was great.
Good. Another question from a watcher. What was the most rewarding part of the production for you?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I guess there's so many points, the big reward is it's always really incredible to like think back to this point when you had like this very vague idea and then realize that, with your colleagues, you've managed to make that a real concrete, thing. Like people can go watch Wharf Rats, and in Wharf Rats we have all these great actors. There's boats and there's goats and there's all this stuff, but at one point it was like, a couple of people just drinking beer talking about, could we make something, so obviously when you get to the end, that's a huge deal. But all through the process there's little moments like that. I think very early on it hit me about how lucky I was to have a crew of friends who were supportive and capable in making this thing. Jenna and Jeremy Larder and Britany McLean, all kinds of people who, were there from the very beginning through the process. And you can't do this stuff, even a fairly small show like Wharf Rats, without people who are very, very supportive early on. Because you're just never, for these small projects, going to have enough money to pay people for the amount of work and labor that they give you. So early on, I would say it was that. And then later on, it's just always incredible to be able to say that, wow, we did it, something that's very hard.
Yeah.
What about you, Jenna?
Yeah, I think very similar to Jason. And, we've already talked about this a lot, but for me, watching the mentors and mentees, watching those relationships evolve from day one until the end, that was really, really cool. And a couple of the partnerships that were formed on our set, they continue to work together. So I think just watching people fall in love with film and watching mentors fall in love with teaching and helping and assisting, that was extremely rewarding in a way that I probably couldn't have predicted. And it's a risk, we really did take a risk that these people would want to do this mentorship aspect of it, and it was successful across the board. We didn't have one issue with that working out, so that was extremely rewarding.
Great.
Yeah, when Jenna and I started, there was nothing like that. In PEI, it was sort of a period where not a whole lot was happening other than the short films we were making, and I would have, it was just something that I know I would have loved back then, like 14, 15, 16, 17 days of shooting with friends, so it's really quite incredible to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Another question. What advice would you give to a shorts filmmaker who is considering producing a feature? What is the most important thing to consider first before moving forward?
Whoa.
Yeah. You've got about 6 minutes.
All right. Probably do it 6 minutes. Ooh, that's a tough one because I feel like I'm still learning every time. You know, I guess a lot of people probably would have given us advice had they read our script saying it was too big. You know, in some ways it probably was, and at some point it felt like it. So, you know, I would say what I was saying earlier about the goats. You know, if the project reads like you think in your brain it's going to be an easy project to make, it's still hard. And so if you start reading through it and there's things like, you know, there's somebody riding a horse and there's also a scene with a guy shooting somebody with a shotgun. And there's also like, you can always think that you can make it easier, but it's probably going to be harder than you think. Everything's harder than you think, I think, you know, so I would focus on character driven stuff. And I would just make something simple. Like that's probably what I would do. If I had to do the whole thing again, I love what we did, but I would probably try to rein things in and give ourselves more time to let the actors act and spend more time doing simple stuff and letting the actors really sort of rule the screen a little bit. So simplify.
Yeah, I think 3 things pop out for me. One thing I didn't realize when producing a feature film, this is my second now, is that, you know, that story is going to be with you for a very long time. You're going to be with it through development, through production, and then through distribution, and it's going to live with you for like a decade at least. So make sure it's something you really, really love, and make sure it's something that you want to fight for and champion, and have a real answer to the why you, why now questions. That's a huge one for me. Like, you really have to be behind this story. And secondly, get a mentor. Find somebody who's produced at this budget level and ask them a million questions. Maybe get a few different mentors and ask them a bunch of questions. That was really helpful to Jason and I. We were able to bounce things off of people and ask as many questions as you can. And like Jason said, make something that's appropriate to your budget level, and really be realistic about that. And work with your writer. I think a lot of younger producers, they feel like the writer just does their thing and you just do your thing. But I think as involved as you can be in that process is really important, because again, you're going to have more investment in that project and help it. Because all of the issues that you flag in the script, if you don't communicate them, they're going to come back to haunt you in the production phase and the edit phase and the distribution phase. So, you know, bring them up soon and talk to your writer. Make sure that there's a conversation.
Great. That's very useful advice. Okay, so I think we have one more question. And the question is, do you have a desire to continue the series or have a part 2? What happens next?
I'm open to any possibility, really. You know, I like making films, you know, with my friends and for ourselves, you know, and so if an opportunity came up to make a movie in a way that made sense, you know, financially and whatnot, then, you know, it's always a possibility. But I'm also, you know, ready to explore other territories and other genres and other stories. And, you know, so I feel like, you know, we did what we wanted to do with Wharf Rats. And I feel like also there's a whole other world of stories out there that we can build on PEI that I'd like to try. But nothing's impossible, you know, anything can happen.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. I think we are at the end. So thank you so much for sharing your film with us and for being here to talk with us about it. And yeah, I look forward to seeing whatever you do next.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks to the festival.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.